I struggle and fight, trying to get it all right. Oh, I push away the very thing I want, thinking it's all up to me, deciding how it will be, forgetting that I'm guided by the one. The more I struggle and fight, trying to get it all right. Oh, I push away the very thing I want, thinking it's all up to me, deciding how it will be, forgetting that I'm guided by the one. So I forgive myself over again, 'cause I'm doing the best I can, and there are no mistakes. I learn every day, and the universe is showing me the way. But sometimes the egoic mind is strong in making me blind. Oh, I run around believing all the lies, when choosing love over fear, a lens that's so bright and clear. All is here, there's nothing to be found. So I forgive myself over again, 'cause I'm really doing the best I can, and there are no mistakes. I learn every day, and the universe is showing me the way. Oh, I am giving up the need to know it all before. I am mastering the art of letting go. I was put here for a reason. I feel it in my bones. There's a purpose in this earth for my soul. So I forgive myself over again, 'cause I'm really doing the best I can, and there are no mistakes. I learn every day, and the universe is showing me the way. Yes, I forgive myself over again, 'cause I'm doing the best I can, and there are no mistakes. I learn every day, and the universe is showing me the way. Yes, the universe is showing me the way. Yes, the universe is showing me the way. Yes, the universe is showing me the way. Oh, the universe is showing me the way.
Kaylin, thank you, Kaylin.
Kaylin, Devi, Rose, thank you. And Todd and Kent, thank you. Ooh, we are so blessed. Yes, the universe is showing us the way. And we can be open and receptive to that way. But we have tools that we can use to begin to walk in that way. Anybody want to do that? Anybody know what the tools we use are? You got them when you walked in. If you didn't get them, please raise your hand and our ushers will make sure you got them. Did anybody not get one? I see a couple of hands here and there and a couple over on that side. So we have some over here on the right. You're right. So today we are going to be talking about those tools, 5 of which you are probably familiar with, 5 of which most of you have probably not heard of because they're new. You know, that's the wonderful thing about unity, is that we are an evolutionary movement. We are always learning and growing and incorporating new tools. And so over the last year, we have been learning to use 5 new tools. I'll be sharing those with you. But for those of you who don't know, or maybe just as a review, it's always good to go back to the basics. Vince Lombardi, one of the greatest football coaches there ever was, would start every training season by holding up a football and saying, "Gentlemen, this is a football." Well, people, these are our 5 principles. We don't have a dogma or creed in Unity, but we do have our basic principles, which identify our core beliefs. The ministry team, the leadership of this Unity Church and many other Unity churches also operates with what we call the ministry pillars, 5 pillars that are our tool to help us create a congruence across everything that we do in this ministry and between other Unity ministries. A congruence that allows us to more easily incorporate our 5 principles and allows us to grow and evolve. And while the 5 principles that we have here in Unity the way they are written is about 40 years old or so. They were actually invented by the Sunday school in one of the churches and have now used in the movement, but they're not new. They took our basic beliefs and just put them into 5 easy statements. And one of the reasons we are doing this is because we noticed over the last couple decades that New Thought churches in general, and Unity churches as well, were kind of losing their way. After all, it's been over 100 years since Charles and Myrtle Fillmore were here to keep us on track. It happens in spiritual work. And in many cases, not this one, I'm happy to say, but in many cases in Unity churches around the world, they were actually becoming New Age churches rather than New Thought churches. Now, you may be wondering, what is the difference between New Thought and New Age? Well, let's take a look at that. The New Age movement began or arose in the 1960s, and it was a label attached indiscriminately to whatever seems to fit. That's the official Webster's dictionary. And we do say that we are all inclusive. And we do recognize that there is truth in so many different teachings. But we ground that in our understanding, in our unity principles, in our interpretation of the teachings of who? Jesus the Christ. Yes, we are Western people. Our prime teacher culturally and in our cultural DNA is Jesus. We also recognize that there is great truth and great power in the teachings of the Buddha, in the teachings of Muhammad, in the teachings of prophets and teachers and mystics down through the ages. That is why on our altar we have the symbols of all the world's religions. But we are unity. And everything we do then is grounded in unity. So New Age kind of incorporates everything but tries to mix everything into the foundation. It may encompass things like channeling angels, ascended masters, even alien entities. It may be a melding of various religions, incorporating different esoteric techniques to connect to spirit, and none of that is bad. Hey, you come to my house, there's crystals all over. Okay? But in unity, we recognize that we have a foundation of spiritual truths and spiritual principles that we build on. So New Age is not what we are. New Thought is what unity is. It's also what CSL is and any other church that calls itself a New Thought church. But what is New Thought? Well, New Thought, as we know it today, dates back to the early 19th century. And it was dreamed of, if you will, by people like Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, Phineas Quimby, E.B. Weeks, Mary Baker Eddy, and so many others who took a look at the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of the great teachers of the world and saw that there was a congruence, that there was a lineage of basic truths, and that all the other things were different tools we use, different ways we might engage that. but the basic truths are the foundation. They come from Greek thought, Roman thought, Asian thought, Hindu thought, Buddhism thought, Judaism thought, Christianity, Islam, and many others. But what these early pioneers noticed was that there were core truths that were identical in each and every spiritual path. And so they focused on discerning the common teachings of the world's religions. And of course, as I mentioned, the earliest one, the one that is considered the grandparent of New Thought is Phineas Quimby. He looked at scriptures. He looked at metaphysics. And he said, there is a truth here. And Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who were students of his, said, there is a truth here. Students of Mary Baker Eddy, Emma Curtis Hopkins, Nona Brooks, they all saw a similar congruence of teachings of truth. So what are those truths? What are those core beliefs that we call our 5 principles that are the core beliefs of New Thought? Well, the first one is God is. God is. God is everywhere present. There is no place where God is not. There is no entity opposed to God. That's one thing that sets us apart from traditional Christianity. We do not believe in a Satan or a devil, except for those devilish thoughts that we have, those devilish beliefs that hold us back. We create it. You may remember 2 years ago, I did a Sunday service at Halloween called Give the Devil His Due. Yeah, the devil is right here. It's us. It is our thoughts. So there's nothing opposed to God. God is infinite intelligence, supreme, universal, and everlasting. And that presence of God dwells in every atom, in every nanoparticle of creation. Guess what that means, folks? It dwells in you. But I'm going to clarify that a little more even. We say God lives in me. And yet in that statement, there's still a sense of separation. It's as if, here I am, and God's like a little alien living inside of me. Yeah. Sometimes that doesn't work out so well. Most times, in this case anyway, it does. But here's an idea. What if instead of God living in you, you are God living as you? Jesus Christ said, do you not know that you are sons and daughters of God, the Most High? Sons and daughters of God. Jesus said that. He didn't say, I am God, and you're not. He never said that. He said, you are sons and daughters of God. That means you are God expressing as you. Does that give you a little bit of a different feeling of spirituality? And that God that is expressing as me, as you, that expression is filtered through our consciousness, through our programming, through our beliefs, through the messages that we have received for generations. And our work, especially in movements like New Thought, I believe, our work is to move past those conscious filters that prevent us from living our full potential. Charles Fillmore believed, I love it when I get amens. Charles Fillmore believed that Jesus was the role model and the way shower, that Jesus was the model of what we are to become. And we are all on that path to getting to that place. That doesn't mean we will all be exactly like Jesus, but we will be as Jesus was, a completed full expression of the divine. Now, there are places where if you said that in a church, they would, smack you with a Bible or, throw holy water on you or something. But we understand that we're not coming from a place of ego. We're coming from a place of understanding. That our teacher and way shower Jesus said, we are God expressing in the terminology of his day. So when we can begin to understand that all life, all creation is God in expression, how different do we treat each other? How different do we treat our environment? How different do we treat our earth? If the earth itself is God alive, if the air is God, if the water is God, how different do we treat it? And how different do we treat each other? And going even deeper, how different do we treat ourselves? Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. We miss the important part of that. Can't love your neighbor until you can love yourself, and vice versa. So that's the highest principle in this, is loving one another unconditionally, healing one another, teaching one another. We know that mental states are carried forward into manifestation and into experience in our daily lives. So what mental states are we holding on to? Are we holding on to a mental state that says, I am moving ever more into fuller expression of God as me? Or are we holding on to a mental state that says, oh, I'm just a sinner, I'm unworthy? Well, guess what? So are you. Satan is everywhere. Which mental state do we choose? So God is. And that God is absolute good everywhere present. That means within us, we are at our true nature, absolute good. I don't care what you've done in the past, as long as we're working on healing it and evolving it and bringing that absolute good that is within us out into expression. Charles Fillmore said, God as the principle of good is eternal, infinite, and unchanging. The fundamental basis and starting point of practical Christianity, that's what we practice, is that God is principle. And by principle, I mean the definite, exact, and unchangeable rules of expression. So our first principle, all boiled down into a nutshell, is God is. The second principle is I am. I am. Human beings, as we've said, have a spark of divinity in us. The Christ Spirit, we call it in unity. For those of you who may not have heard me say 100 times, if you have heard it 100 times, just tune this part out. Jesus' name was not Jesus Christ. The Christ was a term that meant enlightened or understanding or full realization of. His name was Yeshua Bar Yosef. So Jesus' one commandment then was to love. And therefore, when we could see that we are divine and that God, each one of you is divine, then we can love. Then we can embrace God as love within each of us, as the light of God expressing. Our third principle is the law of mind action, or I think. How many of you have ever heard this? Thoughts held in mind produce after what? Their kind. Very good. Some of you know it. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Those beliefs, those ideas, those things that we hold to. If we're holding to ideas, oh, the economy is rotten and it'll never get better. There will never be enough. We'll never have enough money in our church to grow beyond this. Those who are holding on to those beliefs, we're limiting ourselves. We have an infinite supply at hand of all that we need. And the law of mind action is what begins to create the ways we manifest. Charles Fillmore wrote, human beings create their experiences by the activity of their thinking. Everything in the manifest realm has its beginning in thought. Don't like what you're experiencing in your world around you? Look at what you're thinking. Look at what you're thinking. If you're experiencing lack, look at what you're thinking. If you're experiencing illness, look at what you're thinking. If you're experiencing extreme heat, look at what you're thinking. And if you're thinking that cannot be changed, let's change that. Because if we can create the situation, we can fix it. Everything starts in mind. We do not have to manifest every thought we have. Only those thoughts that we see are thoughts that we call truth thoughts. thoughts infused with the power of faith, infused with the power of imagination, and inspired by divine mind. Which brings me to our fourth principle. I pray. I pray. That's how we contact divine mind. That's how we break down what's up here that gets in the way so that we are in direct connection with divine mind. Myrtle Fillmore wrote, prayer is the most creative form of thought. Prayer heightens the conscious connection with God mind and therefore brings forth wisdom, wholeness, prosperity, and all good. And I like this part. Prayer does not change God. You ever prayed hoping God would change his mind? God does not need to change his mind. First of all, he's not a he, he's principle. It's principle. And its mind only knows fullness, only knows completion, only knows divine. So who do we pray to? What are we praying to? What are we praying for? We're praying to change our own consciousness, our own understanding. Prayer changes us by expanding our consciousness toward the Christ consciousness. And therefore, when we pray, we affirm that which is the truth so that we can move closer to accepting the truth. And then that's our fifth principle. I live. I live the truth. Knowing and understanding the laws of life, which we call truth and unity, are not enough. We have to live it. That's the basis of Jesus' teachings. It was the basis of original Christianity, and it is the basis of New Thought and Unity. To live our truth. So in a nutshell, in a couple minutes, there's our 5 principles. You have them on that bookmark you got. Put it up on your wall. Meditate on it every day. But now, what about these 5 pillars I mentioned? Well, about a year ago, not even a year ago, about 8 months ago maybe, we had a Power of Focus ministry workshop with other leaders from Unity churches around the whole Southwest, right here. We're going to be doing it again. And in this, we looked at the 5 pillars of unity. And these 5 pillars are what we have been building on this year. That's why we have seen the growth we have. And that's why we're going to see a whole lot more growth. But what are these 5 pillars? Well, these 5 pillars create the foundation in our day-to-day activities. And everything we do, we look at the 5 pillars and we say, how does this fit the pillars? And if they don't fit, guess what? We let that go. So the 5 pillars are, 1, the teachings we have from Unity leaders, authors, from other leaders and other authors that are in alignment with Unity principle. Specifically, we ground everything on the teachings of the Fillmores and other great teachers. Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, as you know, are the co-founders of Unity. And they took the teachings of our way-shower, Jesus, and formed the foundation of what we believe. Charles Fillmore said, Christianity had become the teachings about Jesus rather than the teachings of Jesus. Think about that. Look at Christianity as we have been practicing it for the last 100 years especially, and you will see that Christianity has become the teachings about Jesus. But what about the teachings of Jesus? And so our pillar says, while we keep the Fillmores a part of everything we do not travel backwards to meet them. We bring them forward to meet us where we are today. So we take those core teachings, which were the same core teachings Jesus had, just put into terminology of the early 19th century or the later 19th century and 20th century, and we bring them forward to today. How do we apply those today? What kind of little different terminology because of language changes through the years? If we did everything and quoted everything the way Charles Fillmore wrote it, we'd be here for another 3 or 4 hours because Charles was wordy. So we bring it into our modern terminology, just like Jesus did. Jesus brought these ancient truths into the terminology of his day. The Buddha brought them into the terminology of his day. Muhammad brought them into the terminology of his day and culture. And so did Jesus and Buddha into their culture. So we bring them forward because Charles himself said, we are an evolutionary movement. As we learn more, we grow. As we discern more, we incorporate it. We are constantly growing in our understanding, moving closer to that Christ fulfillment. Our second pillar that we build on is integral ministry. We recognize that individuals and the collective consciousness of humanity go through various stages of unfoldment. And thus we strive to have a unity center where there's many different kinds of opportunities for spiritual growth. We have the classes I teach, the classes Michelle teaches, the classes Chris teaches, the classes so many others teach. We have yoga, we have tapping, we have spiritual classes, we have actual unity truth teaching classes. You name it. If it supports what we do, we have it here available. And we're going to have more available. So our mission is holistic, to approach the needs of mind, body, and spirit, so that each one of those can evolve and grow. And everybody can evolve and grow with a learning style that meets their consciousness, their place where they are. And that brings us to the third pillar, which is experiential growth. Opportunities to experience and demonstrate and feel the truth. One of the ways we do that is through sacred service. We have all of our various service teams. And we know it has been taught for generations that human beings grow and are healthiest when they are of service to each other, in whatever capacity. Now, you don't have to do that, but it's one of the ways we can grow. And our fourth one is fairly new. It's called IDEA: inclusivity, diversity, equity, and accessibility. Now, while this has been subconscious in the unity movement for quite a few decades, not always. We had to learn too. We admit that. Thankfully, we had people like Reverend Johnny Coleman, who recognized that unity in the 1940s and 50s was very much like the rest of the United States, in that we didn't recognize color. And she called us on it and kind of kicked us in the butt and woke us up. So thank you, Johnny, wherever you are. But we have grown through that. And it is part of our philosophy. The pillar guides us in our vision to co-create a world that truly does work for all, including content and quotes from diverse individuals, from diverse cultures, that invite us to see things from a different perspective. Having workshops like the listening group that was here the other day with the Braver Angels very much fits into that particular pillar. And the fifth pillar is the recognition that we are evolutionary, that we are always becoming more than we have been. It recognizes that we're not just forward-thinking. We are part of a greater unfoldment that calls us to embrace change, to think and to be in different ways. When Jesus taught, he brought about a huge shift in understanding in his culture, from Mosaic law to the law that says, love one another. From a way of thinking that was very black and white, do and do not, thou shalt not. And much of Christianity is still grounded in that old law. Moses brought 10 commandments and 640 laws. And then they added thousands more through the years, every denomination, until it was unworkable. The only law we follow is love your neighbor, love yourself, and love God. So those are the 5 pillars. And how do they work together? What is unity? Eric Butterworth wrote, "Unity is not simply a church to join or a creed to espouse. Unity is a study of religion as a science of living." All too often in human history, in every religion humankind has ever practiced, religion has become outer focused, about a God that's out there, about meeting the rules and regulations created by somebody out there. But what religion should be, and what every great teacher taught, is religion is inner focused. It's inside. It's a study of a scientific way of living. It's an interpretation of the teachings with the emphasis on practice. And I like that. I like that the emphasis is on practice, for it means that we are so much more than the model of a traditional church. Oh yeah, we have services that are very traditional and are in the format because that's what we're used to. But in outer directed religion, the minister or the priest tells you, you must think this way. You must know that this saying of Jesus means this, and there's no room for interpretation. In unity, I say, this is what Charles said, this is what I say, this is what so-and-so said, but what do you think? What do you think? That's what we encourage. What does it mean to love one another, to love God? What does it mean to love yourself? And oftentimes in outer-focused religion, the primary tool they use is fear. If you don't believe exactly the way I say, the devil will get you, or you'll cook for all eternity. I say, listen to what I say, and then put your own interpretation on it, because we're all unique individuals. We are all unique as God expressing, and we all have different ways of taking those teachings and putting them into practice in our lives. That's how we fulfill the mission that Jesus brought. I have come that you may have what? Life, and have it abundantly. That's what we focus on, is that mission statement right there. How do we have life abundantly? How do we have more love? How do we have better relationships? How do we forgive? How do we heal? How do we recognize what needs to be healed in us? That's part of it, because it's never about anybody out there. I promise you it's always about what's in here. How do we do that? We use these tools. We begin with prayer, we turn within. To quote Reverend James Decker, unity came into being at the appropriate time for a divine purpose, helping to recast and clarify existing religious theories and doctrines and make them useful and valid for the people of that time. Unity exists today for the same purpose, and it would surely be a denial of the divine plan should we ever close our thinking to any aspect of the contemporary search for truth. You will learn much more on a Sunday morning. You'll learn even more when you study and take classes and things like that. Not that you have to, but that's where you really delve deep. I get 20 minutes, 30 minutes on a Sunday morning. Can't go too deep. I wish I could, but you'd be here till 4 o'clock. If you want to truly delve into it, look in that. So in conclusion, the 5 pillars are important for what we do and how we do it, but the 5 principles are what we live. God is everywhere present. I am the Christ Spirit that lives in you and in Jesus and in Buddha and in everybody else as God. I think. The law of mind action is the tool I use to create my world and my experiences. I pray and meditate so that I may change my understanding and consciousness. Prayer does not change God, it changes me. And finally, I live. It is not enough to simply hear these things or to even just know these things. We have to live it. For the basis of Jesus' teaching was, know the truth, live the truth, and you will have life and have it abundantly. Namaste.
I wake up every day with a smile on my face, feeling so blessed to be alive. I roll over and look at my beloved sweet face. I'm in awe of his beauty and grace. I've got another page in my book, and I will use it well. I will use it well. 'Cause when I go, I want to know that I left it all on the table, that I gave it all I got. I want to be remembered as love, leaving behind a legacy of light. The life that I live, I feel honored to give in humble service to the divine. Oh, I am grateful for every single breath that I may breathe, for the expansion, for the gift of being me. I've got another page in my book, and I will use it well. I will use it well, 'cause when I go, I want to know that I left it all on the table, and that I gave it all I got. I want to be remembered as love, leaving behind a legacy of light, of light, of light, a legacy of light, of light, of light. I've got another page in my book, and I will use it well. I will use it well. 'Cause when I go, I want to know that I left it all on the table. When I go, I want to know that I left it all on the table. When I go, I want to know that I left it all on the table, and that I gave it all I got. I want to be remembered as love, leaving behind. When I go, I want to know that I left it all on the table. When I go, I want to know that I left it all on the table, and that I gave it all I got. I want to be remembered as love, leaving behind a legacy of light. I got another page in my book, and I will use it well. I will use it well. Thank you.